I'm Jean-Michel Daignan. I'm data scientist at Ubisoft, and I'm drinking mostly hot chocolate.
Hello and welcome, everyone. We are back with another MLOps community podcast, and I am here with none other than Abi. My name is Dimitrios, and we are your hosts for today. And we have the pleasure of talking with Jean-Michel, the data scientist working on the machine learning platform at Ubisoft. I particularly enjoyed this conversation because Jean-Michel came from the data science background and he is now focusing on the platform. So he has the understanding of how data scientists want to do things and what they need. And also he gave a few hot takes on what they need to do when it comes to machine learning platforms. But then I really liked it because he was very honest about, hey, here's our journey. We're starting from this place. We're trying to bring people onto the platform in a very non-invasive way. So he talked about Merlin, their platform, their SDK that they're creating, and they're not forcing anyone on the team to use Merlin, which I thought was fascinating because sometimes people are a little bit more heavy-handed and then you get data scientists who are disgruntled. And so there was that piece of it, but then there was the other side, which is also just as cool. They had the idea of working with recommender systems and figuring out a strong ROI of machine learning. So they were able to do what we talk about all the time on here, tie back their machine learning products to the business use cases and the amount of money that it's going to make the business. So you know you're sitting pretty if you can say your machine learning product is making or saving the company millions of dollars. So what were some of your big takeaways, Abi?
I felt like he was quite transparent. One of the things I loved from this conversation was his focus on how to build things quickly, because this is one thing we talk about a lot in the data science world, which you need to sort of have a balance between delivering value and building something. And I felt like he sort of clarified in the most simple words possible.
I also loved when we went on a little tangent, and of course, with the news, now of course I'm not going to remember the name. I remembered it when we were recording. What is the name of that company that just got a bunch of funding for assets for video games?
That is something.
Scenario, that's it. So Scenario GG got funding, and we went on a little bit of a tangent on how they're using generative AI potentially as a different use case for machine learning and AI within Ubisoft. But he was pretty steadfast. He was like, yeah, we're really focusing on the stuff that, costs or saves. Yeah, it has money, it has ROI. So that all that fun stuff with generative AI, that's great. But we want to focus on the actual money-making stuff.
We'll monitor if you run your models for more than 24 hours.
Yeah. He was yeah. I totally forgot that he said that. So they're watching. They're definitely watching. They give them a lot of leeway, but they're also watching those data scientists to make sure they don't take too much. Anyway, awesome conversation. There are some incredible blog posts that Jean-Michel has put out, and I will leave the links to these blog posts in the description in case anyone wants to check them out. We touched on just pieces of the blog posts, so I encourage you to look at them. And before we jump into the conversation, Abi, you know what we need to do. We need to tell people about
Reviews, Slack, stars.
So I was going to say...
Sponsors.
No, I wasn't going to talk about the sponsors. So before we jump into the full conversation, I do want to mention, if you find any value in the MLOps community podcast, it would mean the world to us if you rate us, give us some stars, leave a review. It's always fun for us to read out some of the reviews that you all are leaving. And
if you make fun of Demetrius in the reviews, he'll love it.
Yes, that actually, I get some sick pleasure out of that. But the other piece is we just ask, like, if you like it, why not tell one friend, just one friend about it? Because the more that this spreads, the more ears it gets into, I think the more it is going to help the whole industry around doing machine learning. So that is my ask of you. Hopefully you enjoy it, and we will see you after the show. No, we won't. We'll see you right now when we get into this conversation. So that is my ask, and that is all we got. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. You've got a rich history, so I kind of want to go into that. I want to start there with all the stuff you've been doing before we dive into your most recent projects at Ubisoft. Can you just give us the TLDR of how you got into this business?
Yeah, sure. Started to work for Ubisoft like 4.5 years ago. Basically integrate a transversal team that is working on data and telemetry and to help to build a platform. But my background is definitely not on machine learning. I don't have a computer science degrees. I really graduated in 2013 from a master degree in physics and engineering. It was really focused around energies and all these things. And I started to work in the area of data to apply it on smart home application, Internet of Things. So I work from different company or research center in France, from the CEA to the EDF, that is like the big energy supplier in France, and I work on their subsidiaries in England. And in this job, I started to work on, of course, smart application, like smart home application, like forecasting energy consumption and this kind of application. But I started also to work on proof of concept related more to some aspect like building a recommender system for an e-learning platform, doing some analysis of turbine data for a nuclear plant, analyzing transcripts of discussion between a client and the customer services. So it was pretty wide because they basically was contact by businesses, internal part of the business, to design proof of concept based on data, machine learning, and testing technologies. So it was really based on that. And during my work at EDF, we were doing a lot of hackathon. So we were trying also to do hackathon on other companies to take like good practices, to see the kind of data that people have access and can play on. And I participated to hackathon in Ubisoft, so I started to network with Ubisoft people. And when my contract finished with my former company, they have a job opening at Montreal, and I really wanted to go back in North America. So it was like a perfect fit for this job application. So I apply, and that's it.
You have been writing a ton, and I love the way that you've been breaking it down, because you have this background where you're coming into MLOps from the other side, we could say, where there's a lot of people that are in your same position, I think. There's a lot of people that are thinking about MLOps, but they're coming from different angles. They don't have that traditional software mindset. And one thing that I think about is when you are working on an ML platform team, as someone who has more of a data science background, what has helped you succeed in this position?
So from my perspective, to be on part of the ML platform teams, so it's really trying to work with developers, like to fit trying to find their language, understand their tools, work like a kind of a team's work when you test technologies. We work with MLflow mostly to do, for example, like model versioning. So at like 2-3 years ago, we did like an evaluation from the data science perspective and from the developer perspective, and how much it will cost to integrate this kind of tool. So I think it's really to communicate with the people that building the platform and trying to find your needs to answer a specific question. I think it's what is really important. And I think also it's really important to understand the landscape. It's pretty messy, that there is a lot of tech, of tools, etc. So really trying to narrow it to your needs and starting small, I think it's pretty important. Just having the basics that can answer a needs is really important. I will really like quote some people from Netflix that I met during a conference that was saying, when you build an ML platform, you should not build it based totally on your data science needs, but on the business needs, basically. So yeah, to bring the right features that can really solve an issue on the business side.
You mentioned the basics. What for you are the basics, like focusing on?
But from my perspective, it's having an easy API call when you want to serve the models. Like it's not too complicated to make the integration. That is pretty standard. In our case, we really fit the standard of Ubisoft and online services of Ubisoft to call our API. From the data science side, I think it's really having the ability to version your models, log metrics when you do some test or online pipeline. I think it's pretty important. And having also access to different kind of machine. And really the setup has been to be pretty easy. You don't need to select exactly the right models of your machine that you want to have, but you just have a small machine, a medium machine, and a large machine. Really make some abstraction on technologies. And if new technology come out, you just update what's under the hood, and after you can so on. And for a data scientist, it should be like very easy to manage on this side.
So as you think about your time in this position, what are some things that you've done, or how have you succeeded where you feel like others have failed potentially and succumbed to the downfalls of being a data scientist in a software engineering world?
Like in Ubisoft or more general?
I think more general is what I'm after.
More general. So I'll be very honest with you. I'm not really a deep learning guy. For me, I'm kind of using random forest, logistic regression, and like trees. I'm a trees guy, so I would say. So I'm really going fast, I think, on my iteration to build models and to build like features engineering. I'm more focused on my data than doing like fancy architecture, even if I find it's very useful. So I think for me, doing a prototype, it's pretty fast. So I think on that, I'm not trying to do the best model in the world. I'm trying to be like good enough, like just having like some kind of medium expectation, just to really reduce, I would say, the time to market, even if it's maybe not the right wording on that, but really to go fast and doing prototype pretty fast. I think it's come out from my previous jobs where we were doing a lot of prototype and we wanted to show like the value of an application pretty quickly and having a prototype that can work very easily. So I think for me, it's really not to focus on what is trendy, like doing like transformers or deep learning, etc. But keep it simple, building a prototype, putting in production, the important part, and after you can iterate and build something more complicated.
All right. So you said something that I find fascinating, which is trying to have the right abstraction so that if anything changes under the hood, you can hot swap it out and the data scientists will never know the difference. When you are building for data scientists, what are some things that you try to keep in mind?
So from the perspective that our team have, so really what I'm seeing, because I'm interacting with people that building the platform and the UI, the portals that we have at the top of our platform, I think really it's to keep this less click possible, for example, in our portals, that everything is available, that nobody is too much constrained. And from the tech side is really maybe the low maintenance, what can be low maintenance to manage, for example. I think it's really what drives us to use MLflow. It was pretty simple to install, pretty low maintenance, and it worked pretty great. It's not perfect, like for example, user management. You've got all the experiment of everybody, so it can be maybe a little bit tricky, and maybe we need some evolution on that. But I think really having something quick and documentation also, I think it's kind of important, but even if it's not enough, but you need to document, because if you have a question of someone that is using your platform, you just think, okay, if you want details, you've got this tutorial, you've got this project, and so on. So building this kind of small things that can help a data scientist to use your platform is really important. And building this layer is really important, and I think having data scientists like power user that can give you feedback is also pretty important on this aspect.
Yeah, that power user is huge. And I also think about just designing for data scientists in general and what the differences there are, because as you mentioned, I think it's more common than not that a data scientist does not have a software engineering background. And it's become a meme now, and it's something that we always talk about in the MLOps community, but how comfortable data scientists are in notebooks. And then they're so comfortable that they want to bring them into production, right? And so when you're thinking about these different design principles, do you try to bring software engineering to the data science team, or do you just say, no, that's too hard to work we're not even getting into that. That's a whole can of worms that we're going to open,
Yeah.
and we would rather not.
Yes. So as I said, I don't have this background in software engineering. So for example, like doing unit test, integration test, for me, it's pretty new. And I have like some kind of, I will not say hot-headed discussion with dev on my teams that push me to do unit tests, but I don't see really the point because it will not fix my problem. But I think at some point when you want to share like function, like for example, we have a lot of people that doing like separate files on their pipeline with a lot of function to compute metrics, log things. This kind of function, if you want to share with people, you need to wrap it doing unit test because it's help to document. It help if someone wants to modify your code, you need to modify your unit test and so on. So it can kind of break the deployment. So on my side, switching from notebook to production is definitely, you can just like export in .py file and put it in production like that. I will say it's okay, but we monitor it that the flow don't take too much time. If people want to do some optimization, we show them a sample project to say, okay, we're doing like that, our feature engineering, or machine learning modeling. So it's definitely to share practices on that. But after, we don't enforce too much, like to do unit test and so on. We are more focused on testing the scalability of your pipeline. We are heavy user of Spark. And I think for me, put the focus to test that your ETLs or your machine learning pipeline can handle 10 or 2 times or 10 times the volume expected of, for example, of players that coming on your games. I think it's more important than doing unit test on your function, and you should focus on that from my experience.
You've been working in pipelines for quite some time. I mean, in your previous role as well, before coming at Ubisoft. Can you take us through the end-to-end pipeline that you're working on, and what are the functions that you?
Sure. So now at Ubisoft, I'm really working on like store recommendation, like in-game store recommendation when you want to buy cosmetics or some other element for your game. So really my process is really to take the event of telemetry because we're tracking like the transaction, some specific action that you're doing in your games. So it's really to take these events, building some features on that, building some target to predict, like for example, the next item to buy. And after that, I'm just building a model that can do this prediction. So I'm using tools like Spark to do all this modeling part on Jupyter, like testing some new models. And after that, I'm going to production. So in this case, I'm just putting all my code that need to run in a pipeline in my GitLab repository. And I can deploy it on an Airflow DAG that is running regularly and updating the recommendations that are served in the game. So that's, I would say, the modeling part. And after that, there is a monitoring pipeline part where I'm building a pipeline that can just monitor the prediction, evaluate the quality of this prediction versus previous prediction. And there is also this fact to test your model. So I'm doing some A/B testing. I'm building a pipeline that can split my player population and test like the treatment and the control and doing all the analytics behind. But it's really like iterative and you have all this modeling part around like doing the data processing and the machine learning, but you have also all the discussion with the client that wants the features, like the game developers that want to have this store recommendation. So you can propose new idea of modelization, you can propose some idea of test. You are also in charge to do the migration on the data side because our data stack is evolving a lot in the past 4 years. So you change your data storage, etc. So kind of part of all this pipeline. I'm kind of, I will say, for a data scientist in our teams, we are alone to do all of that. On other teams that using our platform, they have analysts, data engineer, BI developers that help them to process the event and build the features. But on our side, we really are, I would say, like the full stack data scientists that doing all this part. But we're working with close partner also on the analyst side to get some feedback and so on.
That is seriously a lot, and I wish more people had the end-to-end experience because that's what a lot of people don't get, which is like a lot of work. I think there's a difference now where more and more data scientists are sort of deploying the models in production, but at least classically till 2020, one of the major things was you build the model and then you just give it to the MLA.
Yeah.
And now more people are sort of going with it. My question on this thing particularly was, obviously you're building and maintaining your ETLs. What are the major problems that you have when you're doing maintenance for these things? Where do things break for you?
So for me, really, it's data quality, my main problem, and data freshness. I think it's the main struggle that we get because we are dependent of people that collecting the event and put it accessible to us to process it. And sometimes we are maybe some kind of blind if there is an issue. And sometimes it's the ML side that saying, oh, there is something wrong in your prediction. Your accuracy is dropping. So you contact the people and say, oh, there is something wrong. So it's really to double check everything, I think, on this aspect, to not trust blindly your data provider. I think it's the most important part. But from my perspective and what I'm seeing on other companies, it seems that Ubisoft is pretty good in terms of data. We've got Ubisoft Data Office that give a lot of tools like to orchestrate ETL, to collect the event and do all the processing. So I think Ubisoft has kind of a data culture, and from the CEO, it's important for him to have this data culture. So we have plenty of tools, but sometimes you need to do all the glue to connect everything and work not in a silo to really discuss with your data provider and so on.
So when it comes to the organization and especially talking about data quality, who owns that? Have you taken on the idea of like consumers and producers, and do the data scientists get pinged at 3 a.m. if the model goes rogue? How does that whole process look?
So from this side, we are not definitely on call because we have like safeguard. We've got a fallbacks that is a prediction by default with the most popular items on the store. So even if there is no recommendation that are updated, you still have something that is pretty strong, like for a strong baseline. So that's okay. But after that, it's really for you to have the right monitoring. We don't have something by default, like for example, people that sending features in our platform that detecting if there is an issue. We've got people that working on that for sure. But on my side, I really prefer to build some function. In our platform, we've got something that we call Merlin SDK. That is a wrapper of function that we share with our clients and for us. And we're trying to put our knowledge in it that they can be used by data scientists, but also analysts or people at the beginning of the pipeline in terms of data processing. But we're always trying to build our own alert. And I think having this mindset to build his own alert system and just trying to show what is important for us, it really can help platform to evolve, like ML platform or data platform, in the right way, because you show what is needed in terms of monitoring. Because for monitoring, you can monitor plenty of things, but what is really important is what user really need. And I think trying to prototype your own monitoring is important on this aspect.
And so are you monitoring from the system level and then the data level and also the model level?
Currently, I'm monitoring all my data that I'm producing and sending to our platform and just checking the freshness, checking if there is something wrong in the distribution of the raw data. I'm trying to check the training set when I merge different data sources. So it's pretty small block that I'm building. And also for the monitoring, I have a specific pipeline that is just checking the quality of prediction and so on. So it's really simple. I don't have the pretension to have building a crazy thing stuff. It's pretty, I would say, manual in a way. There is no standard pipeline for monitoring, but I'm really building that for the platform after to say, okay, we need to monitor this kind of aspect. We need to monitor the drifting of the metrics, the freshness of the metrics, etc. Because as I say, the platform, sometimes it's important to reduce the expectation, to not think that because you have a team dedicated to build a platform, they will do everything out of the box, or they will do like what you saw on Tech Blog, on Medium, etc. It's really important just to sometime taking the tool that you've got at your disposition and hacking the things and just show what your needs. I think it's really important. From our perspective, we're doing a lot that in my teams, but user of Merlin also hacking our platform. Like for example, we've got on one side an ETL scheduler that can process all the event. And on the other side, our platform that doing another Airflow instance that launching the pipeline. And some of our users just triggering their Airflow pipeline from the ETL product that processing the event. It's not a features that we are allowed, but they can do it. And they just hack their way on it. And I think it's important to give them the liberty to do it, but at some point to take these needs to really feature of your platform.
So the people listening are probably going crazy right now because I've done a poor job of asking you about what the use case is and what kind of scale we're talking about. Basically, can you give us some numbers and a little bit of nitty-gritty details on what exactly you're doing? Everything that you can share. I imagine there's some stuff that's confidential, but break that down for us, because from what it sounded like, from what I caught, it's a recommender system. But I imagine there's other use cases or not?
From me, I'm working mostly on recommender system because it's for the companies, I will say, the project that has the most important ROI, like return on investment, because it's pretty simple to implement. You get good result when you do some analysis. But we've got clients that using our platform to do like cheater detection or friends recommendation in our PC client. We've got also people that are doing recommendation but not in store, in game, like for example Just Dance, they're using our platform for their next songs recommender. So there is like plenty of use case. Originally we were really focused on personalization, but now with the merge of teams, we're trying to have also like player safety project or player support project that are bring by other people in the data office. But on my case, store recommender, like it's pretty important to have that at the release of a game. Because like when we're releasing an Assassin's Creed games, you need to have the recommender at day one, and it's pretty important because it's million of players. It's not a secret on that we get million of players. So you can expect to get like million of recommendations that need to be computed. Maybe they are not useful because like, doing some conversion in games, it really depends on the kind of games and all these factors. But you need to be ready at some point just to build personalization in your games.
So you've got the recommender system. You also mentioned that you're using Airflow as a DAG. You're scheduling stuff. You have that ETL or ELT. I can't remember which one you said, but I get them confused anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So the thing that I'm interested in, though, you kind of hinted at Merlin and this SDK that you've got and you've built on top. It's like an abstraction above all of what you're doing below, which is these ETLs and the Airflow. Is that right? Or how does it look?
Not really. Currently, it's a developer of our platform that built this wrapper of function. It's different modules that can help you, for example, to send a message via Slack, to send a message to Teams, to send a message by email. So you can build every message that you want. There is also modules around A/B testing, like to split population. If you want to build new players in your pipeline and you want to split them.
Oh, nice.
When you do A/B testing, if you want to do significance test, so you have a function that we wrap based on our experience. There is a data quality module that check the features quality. So it's really a set of wrapper of function that can interface with some module of our platform. Like for example, with the Merlin SDK, if you want to update your fallbacks for your application, you can do it in a programmatic way. It's just a simple pair of function. And also you can interface with other elements of the online services of Ubisoft. Like for example, check the catalog of items for a store, in-game store, to check what is available. We have a function that it's a one-line function when you can just get this information. So it's really more like experience sharing that give you the ability to interact with the platform, but not only, but really for a data scientist to do his job at Ubisoft. Because we kind of targeting to be the machine learning platform at Ubisoft at some point. So having this kind of interaction with also other part of the online world of Ubisoft is really important for us.
But you're not forcing the data scientists to use it, or you're not forcing anyone to use it?
No. What we want is really an inner source project. So people, if they want to add new function, new modules, they can do it. They open a merge request and they have to enter in kind of the discussion with developers. You should do unit tests. You should do all these things. But we've got, for example, people that working in Paris, they develop a module around collaborative filtering, so really tailored for a recommender system. But as they're bringing some specific algorithm on their application, they really want to share it with people. And so like that, everybody can use it. But it's kind of this process really need to have like manager, director to push this kind of initiative, like to contribute. And at Ubisoft, I think we have a pretty good ecosystem in terms of machine learning and data scientists that are really are pushing our platform and people to contribute to it.
So what it looks like to me is you're building sort of like this infrastructure for other data scientists in the company to sort of use and to be able to derive more insights. And one of the major areas of work has been recommendation systems. But I also wanted to take a little bit away and talk about the data storage. I'm assuming you would have massive amounts of data. I'm not entirely sure what the data schema looks like. Do you use the conventional table structures, or what kind of data storage systems do you use?
So currently our platform is really structured with S3. We just taking the files from the Ubisoft data ecosystem, just copy them on S3 and having after glue that is doing the glue with the files and rebuilding the table. So it's kind of our data storage strategy currently. We are calling that at the beginning a feature store, but it's not a feature store. It's not a collection of storage and database, to be honest. But now that we are merging with other teams, they have some feature store. I think I shared a presentation of one of our colleagues that they build a feature store for fraud detection. And we really want to bring this feature store bricks on the platform, having a decent one on it. It's pretty hard work, to be honest, from the echo that I have from people that doing this part of the platform to build the feature store. And discussing with other ML platform on other company, it seems that the adoption is difficult for this concept of feature store. But I think at Ubisoft, people are starting to understand what we want to do and how useful it could be to share features cross game. For example, when we're building a recommender system on Assassin's Creed games, we're using data from previous Assassin's Creed also, just to have a models that can take that in account. So having this concept of feature store, having standard features between games, it's pretty important, and I think it's gonna be our future on it.
I have heard feature stores are a pain in the ass.
Are you doing a lot of work with batch, or are you doing a lot of work with streaming?
For us, it's definitely my pipeline are in batch, because for my use case of in-game store, it's batch, it's perfect to start. But we already recently released a live prediction feature, so it's not like there is no streaming and computation of features in live, but it's more the game client that's sending information of the session, and after that the model is processing this event, building this feature on the fly and computing. But really, one of the aspects that the teams that building our feature store data storage strategy is to have the ability to in live building features in the pipeline. But it's kind of not difficult, but there is like streaming strategies at Ubisoft around data processing, and we are part of this discussion, but it's long way, I think, to at some point to go to streaming, but we can still bring great value by doing batch prediction, so it's pretty good at some point, but definitely it will unlock new capabilities for machine learning to have a streaming ability.
So there is one thing that you mentioned in your recent blog post that came out talking about, well, it didn't come out yet, but I've been privy to see the draft, and I think by the time this actual episode comes out, it will be out. So I'm going to act like it's come out already. And you mentioned that one thing you should do when you are working with an ML platform, which I found hilarious, is basically lower your expectations of what the ML platform is going to be. Can you explain yourself a little bit for us?
Yes, so on this aspect, it's really because we've got data scientists and some that are really, that know their the machine learning worlds, they know technologies. And so people are really expecting at some point that the ML platform will do everything out of the box. And it's pretty difficult. And sometimes we've got like needs that are, I want to use this tech, but they don't say it to do what. And maybe you can do the same thing without this tech. Sometimes what is important that an ML platform will not bring all the tech in the world. It's not scalable in terms of cost, it's terms of maintenance. And really, it's only bring what is really needed because we have prioritization and so on. So I think for me, it's important that an ML platform need help also, as I said, to design what is needed on your platform and get feedback on that. And I think having power user, it's important. In our case, when we build the machine learning platform teams, we were 2 data scientists always on the platform as a power user, but now we have power user also in France, other people in Canada. So I think having their feedback is important, but they should be like lower their expectation. And for sure, I think we could have been faster on some aspect, like going full managed service, like using SageMaker end to end. And we will have something that can run pretty fast, having live in prediction a few months above, etc. But from my perspective, it's good to start with that. And I think I will quote Jacopo from the Play Meetup on Rexis on that you can start with that. And after, you can go more deeper in some custom things. But for us, as we are kind of untitled also with the life cycle of a video games, so we don't have always all the deadlines that you need the features for tomorrow. Sometimes you get 6 months, 1 year to build it. And for example, the live prediction, our main client was people that building the new Just Dance games. So the deadline was really at the release of the games. I think it helped to take time to start with managed service to do POC and after switch to a more custom way. Even if from my perspective, we should go just full manage, but I'm a data scientist, so I just want everything the quickest. But it's really a different mindset.
How different are the features for different kinds of games depending on, I don't know, like, you might have plenty of games. I know just one, there's Tom Clancy's one, but I don't know a lot of other ones.
Yes, so from the features, you mean like the features in the models or the features in the...
Features in the recommendation systems that you're putting up.
So, so once again, I'm like three guys, so I'm just doing like, for example, on a game like Rainbow Six Siege, you are going, for example, to focus really on how people are using this kind of character in the games, because like each character has his abilities, so, and each character has his own cosmetics, so it makes sense to just mix how people are playing each character and just building recommendation with that. But on a game on Assassin's Creed, there is like plenty of features or the kind of weapon that you are using because you're really building your character. If you want to play the female or the male character, also it's important in your in this kind of models. So it's really to adapt the data processing in features engineering to that. But the logic is kind of the same. So you process the data of a specific day. You look at what has been buy on this specific day and just doing join on that, and just to adapt to the kind of game. So for example, on a game like Just Dance, like the features are kind of different because it's different models and different games. But you really need to adapt. I think what's good at Ubisoft is that we've got franchise. So what you build for one game, you can be pretty sure that you can reuse it on the next games out of the box. Like for example, on Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the processing can be really similar on the way to process the event. And it really helps you to build quickly a proof of concept that can go in production. And after you can iterate and really build a specific model for your application.
One of the more in general questions, which is, do you play games?
So I was definitely less playing games before to come at Ubisoft, but for sure I'm playing games. Currently, my favorite one is Marvel Snap, for sure. It's a card games that you can play on your phone. Definitely, it's kind of my drug for the past months. As you can see also, I'm building an article on that to build better decks. But at Ubisoft, I really like Assassin's Creed games. I really like this idea of historical games like RPG, and I'm playing like different games. I have a huge catalog of games that I buy in the past, so I need to catch up on that. But I'm playing like different game.
Is it a prerequisite to work at Ubisoft that you got to be a gamer?
Not really. It's not a prerequisite, but I think it really helps a lot when you building features that are close to the gameplay. I think you need to
you got to know it a bit.
Be ready to play the games, to check your data, check your tracking, etc. But there is like a lot of data scientists that don't playing too much game, like people that are doing machine learning that don't do too much game because they are on more specific aspects that are not related to the game directly. So I think on that Ubisoft is pretty open. It's really based on your job.
So I was reading one of the papers around a very similar thing, which is basically there were a couple of data scientists who were using player data to be able to understand player personalities and to be able to model their behaviors. Is that something that you do inside Ubisoft as well? And does it help?
There is teams. Yeah, there is teams that doing this kind of analysis. At Ubisoft, we've got what we're calling user research laboratory that doing this kind of analysis to detect different kind of profile in the game. People that doing like more exploration, that have people that doing more crafting. So there is teams that doing this kind of analysis, and what they do, it really helps sometimes to detect bugs also. For example, on some mission that there is something wrong, people are stuck and they don't know why, because there is maybe some bugs at some point. So it's really this kind of teams that doing that. And the data office is giving tools for these teams to build their dashboard and analytics on that. And me, I'm part of the data office, so I'm helping more on the machine learning side on that. But their input is really important because it can help to do the feature engineering for a specific models. If they show some new trends, like for example, a new items is really trendy on a shop, you should maybe knowing this information on your recommender system.
So I wanted to take this in a bit of a different direction now. I was thinking about how you mentioned earlier how you're a tree guy and you like the random forests and all that. There is a lot of buzz right now, as you know, when it comes to deep learning and all the diffusion models or the foundation models. And how do you think about, or how do you juxtapose the two? Like, you're now building tools for the data scientists. I'm sure some of the data scientists that you work with are really hyped on the new deep learning stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
And they're probably asking you, hey, what about, can we get some GPT-3 or Chat GPT support for this? And then we could build this feature and it'd be so cool.
Yeah.
How do you weigh the two? Because on one hand, you have a very clear use case with the recommender systems. And like you said, it's easy to calculate the ROI on that. And then you have this more innovative pie in the sky type thing with the way machine learning feels like it's going and where potentially it could be in a few years or longer or shorter, depending on who you're talking to. So how do you take those trade-offs into consideration?
Yeah, on this one, really, so I'm not talking for my teams, it's more my perspective on that. But it's really, we give them a platform with some GPU. If they work, it works, but they will have this kind of architecture and this kind of GPU and machine on that. But definitely there is people in Ubisoft that want to operate this kind of models. Our GPU, you can run stable diffusion on it. That's totally fine if they want to use it. But at the end, if you want to serve your output, you can really use the classic online services way. Our API is really standard, it's user-based, so you cannot really serve, I will say, from the classic online services way. But if they want to have a Flask API that's running on an EC2 that like running like 24 hours and so on, they can do it. I will not advise them to do it because it costs money for the usage. We try to monitor it and we will see it. But we are open to use these kind of models, and it's really more political because there is also other teams that are working on this aspect around generative AI. A team like LaForge, that is kind of our R&D, that is doing the link between the academy and industry, working on this topic. And they really want to prototype things. And maybe at some point we can switch to us or not. We've got also like someone that's doing a lot of talk around NLP at LaForge called Ben Swanson. It's a really interesting guy. He built some interesting tools. There is different needs on this aspect, and for sure we investigated that and how we can integrate it, but there is no, I will say, a real use case to be put in production yet on this aspect. So it's really for us putting in production something. So it's just like building something that doing some drawing in the games. It's maybe not what we want to tackle, but who knows, if there is some ideas around that can be cool. Our platform can be open to that, but we need a real use case.
I was thinking about, because I've seen a lot of these Stable Diffusion Photoshop plugins or Blender plugins, and if some of your artists or if people working on the creative side, and I think I just saw, now, what is it, Scenario.gg, they just got a bunch of funding and they create assets for games. And they're using, I think they're using Stable Diffusion on the back end, but don't quote me on that one. And
I think it's Stable Diffusion.
Yeah, so it's almost like I was just thinking about how you have this recommender system, which is one that is, again, like you said, it's almost like more of the traditional ML in quotes. And then you have some of this other stuff, and especially when it comes to gameplay and the mapping out of new characters or new assets and trying to make that process faster. I was wondering if you have thought about servicing the needs with some of the generative AI and what you're thinking about when you're creating the data platform or the ML platform that will help those teams.
So in our case, definitely we are more focused to what can be served at the player level than more at the tools that can help to build video games. There's other teams that are working on this aspect. There is a team in the technology group that is another part of Ubisoft. I think there is a paper that they build around detecting bugs in your code that you push, etc. So they are more focused on this aspect. But it's like kind of the foggy area how you can use an ML platform and hack it for your needs on this aspect. But our mandate at some point needs to be like kind of the ML platform, but we really focus first at the player level, what we can do to the players. So it could be gameplay, it could be like around monetization or on the other aspect. But after that, bringing new use case, it's really up to the developers that want to have these features available, and we need to adapt on that.
When you start getting some of the characters to be powered by Chat GPT and you can have conversations with them. That will be the fun part. So, dude, this has been awesome. Abi, did you want to mention anything before we sign off?
This is quite interesting because you have a very clear use case that you've been working on. There's so much scope of the number of things that you can do at a gaming company, and because I was sort of like interviewing Unity, and they had these very similar teams. They had like a team working on art and on ML agents and stuff. But to be able to serve the customers, one of the things I wonder on that side is about the volume of the data that you have. And how much data do you keep in current, and when do you decide to discard a particular data? Because any person that's playing the game will more likely keep on playing the game. So when do you decide, okay, now this data is not relevant for us?
Good question. So definitely for sure, if a player doesn't want for us to keep the data, we've got all the GDPR legislation, so they're totally out of it on this aspect. But it really depends on the models that you are building. Like on my case, I'll be building a recommendation based on the data on the last 7 days of transaction, because I think it's a good trade-off about taking and finding the right like tendency on the last week of data. And I'm always only updating recommendation for people that play for the last months or last 3 months. To limit the cost, because we saw that with this approach we can basically catch like a big amount of the transaction, and it's good enough for us. So it's really depend on terms of cost, and we currently trying to see it because as you know, like with the recession and so on, we need to reduce cost. It's very important for us. So we're trying to also to monitor how our user of our platform using our platform and how much recommendation they're loading for the batch serving, and maybe ask them after a few weeks, hey, you should maybe reduce because we see the number of API calls, we're seeing how much rows you're updating, it doesn't match really, so you should maybe reduce and trying to apply some strategies. And we're trying to show the good example, like to say, okay, in our project, this is our best practice, and it's validated by all these clients, so maybe you should follow it in terms of cost saving.
Excellent, man. So this has been so cool. Thank you so much for coming on here, and thank you for writing these blog posts and being so transparent with your journey and what you all are doing at Ubisoft. I know I've appreciated it a ton because you get to see the real process of how someone goes about building a machine learning platform. And so that not a lot of people are sharing, and I thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. And I really hope that we can continue to discuss about what we are doing, because with the merge of our teams in Paris and in Montreal, I think they're doing pretty cool stuff and they want to promote it outside also.
Yes. And for anybody that was wondering, I asked Jean-Michel what something he is proud about is. And, you know, some people say they had a child. I'm very proud about that. Or I climbed Mount Everest. He said, I've been running multiple machine learning pipelines in production for the last 4 years. So it's not all fun and games when you're doing this machine learning production stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that. I had a nice laugh when I saw it. So thanks again, man. It's been great having you.
Thank you. Bye.